Welcome to Prepared for Parenthood, the podcast for hopeful, expectant, and new parents with little ones up to age 5. I'm your host, Dr. Stefanie Dueger, a psychotherapist, author, educator, parent coach, and married mother of 2. On this show, we'll discuss everything from the most up-to-date practicals of best supporting your young children, to thriving in relationship as a family, more surprising topics around the psychology and development of babies from conception through age 5. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. I'm thrilled to have you here today. Welcome back to Prepared for Parenthood. I'm really excited. Our guest today is Stefanie Adler, a certified nutrition consultant, functional diagnostic nutritionist, women's hormone and fertility expert, and birth doula. Her practice focuses on supporting those with cycling bodies in balancing their hormones, healing their guts, and all things baby making. Using her root cause and traditional nutrition approach, Stefanie's able to give women the knowledge and tools that they need to thrive in a modern world. Welcome, Stefanie. I'm really happy to have you here today.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Could you share a little bit about what a root cause and traditional nutrition approach is and how you first became interested in nutrition?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go backwards with your questions, but as a lot of people, I think, in the health and wellness space, this came from my own struggles and my own path. My parents say that I had digestive issues from the day they brought me home from the hospital, and I don't remember a time where I didn't have stomach aches. When I was probably 12 or so, we really started investigating it further. And basically, I got diagnosed with IBS and was told by my doctors that I was going to have to live like this for the rest of my life and just learn to manage it. And at the time, being 12 years old, I just wanted to go to bar and bat mitzvah parties without having to call my mom from the bathroom, being like, I don't feel good, please pick me up. And it just seemed insane to me. That was the answer, that there was nothing else they could do except for give me some medication that made me feel worse and didn't actually help at the end of the day. And so when I pushed back on it, I actually found this out as an adult. My mom didn't tell me this when I was a kid, but the doctors told my mom that I was making it up for attention and that they had real kids to treat and to get out of their office. And I'm so grateful, actually, that happened because it really led me to taking ownership of my health into my own hands at a very young age. I changed my diet. And despite my doctor saying it wouldn't help me, symptoms that I'd been having for 13 years went away in 3 months. And I was really blown away by the power of food to be medicine or the catalyst for dis-ease in the body. And so I was always really interested in health and wellness, ended up getting a degree in conflict resolution, which I love and use every day in relationship, but ended up getting a second degree in nutrition because it was my calling. My mom had said to me when I was leaving for college, you should be a nutritionist. And I was like, Mom, you know nothing about me. You actually knew everything about me. Your mom is always right. And then when I was in school for nutrition, really went down this path of realizing I wasn't paying attention to some other things in my body, like the fact that I was taking birth control and had this whole journey of reclaiming my hormones, really becoming interested in fertility and wanting to make that my life's work. And when it comes to taking a root cause approach and a traditional nutrition approach, it's really coming back to what I experienced. We weren't looking at the root cause. The conventional medical system is looking for a way to make your symptoms go away, but that's it. They're just band-aiding it. And when we really come and look at a root cause approach, it's about figuring out what are these hidden blocks to wellness? What are these hidden barriers to your body's ability to heal itself? Your body is so divinely designed. Your body is so wise and is constantly working to bring you to balance and constantly working to heal you. And so most often our current environment and our, the lifestyles that we're leading and the ways that we're eating, which are so far from what our bodies were designed to do, is creating an environment where the body can't heal itself. And so what I do when I take that root cause approach, we typically use functional lab tests that conventional doctors either don't know how to use or don't want to use or whatever their reasoning. They don't know what the solutions need to be, whether that's with diet, stress management, et cetera, to really lift up the hood and figure out what's going on. What are some of those hidden blocks to wellness? And then really taking a holistic approach, looking at your diet, looking at your environment. What are you coating your body and your cells in every single day? thinking about your inner thoughts, your connection to spirit, all of that, really taking that whole approach to help you come back to balance and help your body heal itself. And it's incredibly successful and incredibly empowering when I have women who have worked with doctors from all over the world. And within a few months, we're able to really identify this is what's going on. This is how we address it and address it for good. And when it comes to that traditional nutrition piece, it's not that complicated. And we have just come so far from what is normal for our biological bodies. And so when we go back to the wisdom that traditional cultures, indigenous cultures, and I'm not really talking about Paleolithic, I'm just talking about what were we doing 200 years ago before modern science got in the way of what our bodies really need to thrive. And when we combine these two factors, the modern science of these functional labs to help us identify toxins and overgrowth and imbalances that have been a result of our modern environment, and the ancient wisdom that our bodies really know, and we bring them together, is when we really truly find healing.
Your story about how you got into nutrition reminded me of my experience with our second child, who was very hard to soothe when she was little. And when she started preschool, every day that they would make bread, she would come home and get sick.
Mm.
And we were trying to figure out what was happening. She was still nursing at the time. And I went to see my own naturopath, and we walked in, myself and my two daughters, and she took one look at our littler one and said, she's got terrible food allergies, right? And I was like, what? How do you know that? She'd never seen my child before. She said those dark circles under her eyes are the telltale sign for a little one. She said, stop eating gluten, take dairy out, and see what happens. And in 3 days, because she was still nursing, in 3 days, she weaned herself. She was like, okay, I'm done, Mom. And in 3 weeks, all the stomach issues stopped. So it's, like you're saying, really powerful, the impact that food can have on us. It's surprising and powerful, amazing.
That's really a beautiful story in the sense that how transformative it was and how quickly. It just shows you how resilient our bodies are when we're giving them the right ingredients and the right tools.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people who are listening to this podcast are either trying to get pregnant or know somebody who is, or have a family member who's hoping to have a pregnancy. Can you speak to how to maximize your fertility and how perhaps using food and other things like that is helpful?
Absolutely. I think it's so interesting to me when I go to a party that, people ask, what do you do? And I tell them what I do. And I'm like, yeah. And I focus on helping women with hormones and fertility. I almost always get the question, what does that have to do with fertility? People don't even put together that eating has something to do with your fertility. And what I want to share is it probably has the biggest impact of anything that you're doing. The way that we nourish ourselves is so deeply connected to fertility. And I'm a big Weston A. Price Foundation person. I think that they're an amazing organization. If you're not familiar with them and you're listening to this, definitely go learn more about it. I would even recommend becoming a member of their organization. And one of the things they focus on so much is nutrition for preconception, pregnancy, and postpartum, and even like sacred foods for young children. And a lot of it's rooted in ancestral and indigenous wisdom. So Weston A. Price was a dentist in the early 1900s who went around the world to figure out what was going on with indigenous cultures who, after they introduced modern food, went from having these perfect teeth to really crooked teeth that we're commonly seeing in the Western world today. And what he found is that it influenced everything. Once they introduced these Western foods, childbirth became more difficult because it changes the shape of the pelvis. Ear infections are more common because it changes the shape of the face. Anyways, it's all so connected. And so Weston A. Price, one of the things that he found is that indigenous cultures had very high levels of what we now know are vitamin A and vitamin K in their diet. And it's so interesting to me because when you look at the recommended daily allowance, the RDA for vitamin A, which is different than beta carotene, we'll talk about that in a second, it's pretty low relatively. There's a lot of fear around vitamin A in pregnancy. People are advised not to use retinol, things like that. But synthetic vitamin A and natural vitamin A are very different things. And natural vitamin A is so important for fertility. And these tribes all around the world, it's interesting. He went to places in Africa, in the Arctic. So they were all eating very different diets, but they were all getting these vitamins in these sacred foods. And It's estimated that they were getting 50,000 IUs of vitamin A in its original form a day. The recommended dosage is no more than 25,000 a week now. And vitamin A is found in things like liver, which, again, if you go back thinking about traditional nutrition, I know that my grandparents were eating liver all the time, right? Maybe that's partly being Ashkenazi Jew, but I think that was also just a more common thing where people ate all parts of the animal. How many women today eat liver? Hardly ever. Like, I work with women all over who would look at me like I'm crazy when I tell them I want them to start eating liver. And vitamin A is also found in high quality dairy products, which people are moving away from more and more. And so we're, as a society, very deficient in vitamin A and also vitamin K, which is also primarily found in dairy. And these foods in nature make so much sense together. They're often found together. We're deficient in them, and we're seeing a massive fertility crisis as a result. And so I think the more that we are moving away from those traditional principles of eating and we move more towards convenience foods. I'm not just talking about junk food, that's convenience food. Convenience food also looks like a protein shake. We actually know that lean protein, which has been pushed on us for a long time now, actually depletes us of vitamins A and K. In certain cultures, like one of the ones in the Arctic, they would have these seals and they would basically take the meat and make jerky out of it, but they would never eat the jerky unless they were dipping it in the seal fat. They were never eating it without the fat because the lean meat deprives us of our nutrients. And now for convenience sake, it's chicken breasts that are skinned and not on the bone that you just grill really fast and you get from a salad place and you put it on top of your sweet green, whatever it is. We really need to go back to, when it comes to thinking about fertility, what are these sacred foods and how do we prepare them properly? Thinking about nose-to-tail eating, animal fats, getting plenty of deeply colored pigmented foods that have those phytonutrients that are so good for supporting egg quality. And just really going back to a more rooted source of nutrition.
Fascinating. And I'm so interested. I know that your specialty isn't working with men, but obviously sperm is half the equation in creating a little human. And it takes 3 months for the sperm to mature. So is it the same for men eating in terms of sperm quality?
Absolutely. Yeah. Sperm take approximately 72 days for their life cycle, and eggs are about 90 days. It's a little bit faster, but we're in the same 2 to 3 month timeline when we're working on really rejuvenating quality. And yes, it's so interesting. So there was a study several years ago on caffeine, and specifically it was looking at coffee. And it showed that men and women who were drinking more than 3 cups of coffee a day had an increased to 75% risk of miscarriage. And what was so interesting is that we would think about the woman's holding the baby, right? So the caffeine is probably impacting it that way. The men, it goes in once and then it's done, but it was showing the same percentage in terms of risk of miscarriage. And so we know that the oxidative stress that is happening in a male's body is impacting sperm. We also know that a woman's body views pregnancy as an opportunity for detox. And this is a lot of times when we're seeing pregnancy loss and miscarriages. Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, who wrote the GAPS book, I heard her speak at a conference recently, and she was talking about how she's seeing more and more frequently now that women are having anywhere from 1 to 3 miscarriages when they come to her before they're having a successful pregnancy. And she believes it's because of our toxic load these days and how much the body is then getting ready for a subsequent pregnancy where it's going to be healthy. And we're also seeing issues more with kids with eczema and other chronic health conditions. 51% of kids nowadays have a chronic health condition. And we think some of that is the toxicity piece too. A woman's body uses it as an opportunity to detox, which kind of makes sense, biologically speaking, but the sperm does the same thing. So if a man has a high toxic load, even though it's just a tiny little sperm that's going before it grows into a fetus embryo baby, we know that dad's toxic load is very much going into the baby and influences everything about pregnancy. 50% of pregnancy loss is related to sperm quality. So it's definitely important for sperm quality and for dads to be. And we're looking at sperm rates that are dropping significantly in a pretty alarming way. It's estimated that by 2050, which is 25 years from now, right? That doesn't feel so far in the future like it used to. It's estimated that the median sperm count in the Western world is going to be 0.
Oh, that's not great for our population, is it?
It's really alarming. And the biggest reasons that researchers think this is happening is one, obesity, and two, toxicity. And so when it comes to, again, eating whole foods, eating organic foods, paying attention to where your foods come from, right? Focusing on the quality so that you're not carrying that toxic load, eating foods that support the systems in your body, like your liver and your sperm and all of the systems that work together in harmony. Another thing that I didn't mention with women was a really neat study. It was actually done on women who were doing IVF because it's pretty hard to do studies on the general population when it comes to fertility. There's a lot of ethical issues around it, but the studies found that when women were eating a diet that was 25% carbs, 45% fat, and 30% protein, their fertility rates skyrocketed. They had much more success in IVF. They went on to have healthy babies. Most people are not eating anywhere close to that. Most people's carbs are probably in the 30 to 45%. Their fats are probably in the 18 to 20%, and protein makes up the rest. And I find that when dads to be and moms to be go on a diet that more closely resembles those macros and really focuses on protein and animal fats, they tend to have a lot more success from a fertility perspective.
Interesting. And when you work with people, women specifically, do you invite them to cleanse first to try to get rid of some of those toxins, or do you just jump right into the seal fat and whatever else they're going to eat?
I would love for us to be eating seal fat in continental US, but no, we're focusing on other healthy fats too. Yes, it really depends on the person. And sometimes, depending on who the client is, some of those hidden blocks to wellness that we're looking for might be heavy metals, might be mycotoxins coming from mold. It might be environmental toxins, but really varies person to person. So sometimes we'll run like a total tox test or something and really start to see, okay, like maybe you actually have really high levels of BPA and need to stop touching receipts. And also let's detox your body from it. I would say most of my clients do some form of detox before getting pregnant. And it's something I wish more women before they got pregnant did intentionally. I think that they would have much easier path to pregnancy, much healthier pregnancies. And also we're gifting then our children the gift of a less burdened body.
For sure. Stephanie, you had your first baby about a year ago, right? Do you want to share a little bit about what that journey was like and has been like as a new parent, and maybe how nutrition has helped in that arena as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So my son is almost 20 months old. So we are deep in the toddlers. And it's so funny. I know everyone is really different. I loved the newborn phase. I loved it. I didn't mind the waking up a lot at night. And I'm happy to talk about why I think that didn't bother me so much. And I loved holding him all day for months and months on end. And also, this phase is so much fun. He's fully talking to us and communicating and just so willful. And it's so cool to see. And it's just so funny because I think everyone, when your child turns a year, they're like, congratulations, you made it through the first year. And in hindsight, I remember when they said that to me being like, that didn't feel so hard. And I feel like the 6.5 months since then was felt much more challenging just as they're way more mobile and active. But I had a very blessed experience getting pregnant. I got pregnant on the first try, and we actually weren't even really trying. My temp drop, which is how I tracked my fertility, had a low battery and I was at Burning Man. It's a long story. If you're interested in it, I have a podcast episode where I share about our conception journey. But we got pregnant. I had a healthy pregnancy. I was nauseous as could be and throwing up for 20 weeks, but I still loved being pregnant. It was such a beautiful spiritual experience for me. And I ended up having him at home. I had a home birth and everything was great. I truly feel so grateful for that. And I think knowing how to nourish myself was a huge part of that. I didn't experience fatigue in pregnancy. I didn't experience fatigue in my first year of parenthood. We did co-sleep. And I think that made a really big difference as a breastfeeding mom because I never had to get out of bed. I could just roll over and offer the other side and we would all go back to sleep and it was all good. So I really think that was a big part of it. But also, I really intentionally nourished myself. I think a lot of times in that first year of parenthood, people are really surprised by just how much it is in terms of work. And I know so many people who just are like, we order in. That's just the way that we make it easy, especially if both parents are working. And you're missing such an opportunity to give your body what it needs even more of now, especially if you're breastfeeding. Pregnancy is this massive mineral dump to the baby. You give everything to the baby. And then you go through this big event, no matter what it looks like, to give birth, where you pull on reserves that your body didn't even know you had. And then if you breastfeed, you continue to give it to the baby, and our mineral needs increase. You would think it's twofold, but it's really tenfold. So one of the things I've been doing is running mineral tests on myself. I love the hair mineral analysis test. I think it is such an amazing way to see the way the body is dealing with stress. And it's good stress, but having a baby is stress, right? And also our mineral needs. And I actually just got my most recent one back, and I'm still nursing at 20 months, and my sodium and potassium are way lower than they need to be. Even though I'm doing as much as I thought I could be doing, I'm going to be able to do more because I have that information to set myself up for hopefully a healthy second pregnancy when I'm ready for that. So I think minerals are a really understated piece of this. And also those really nourishing sacred foods for new moms. Every culture had what they considered sacred foods for pregnancy, young babies, and everything in between. And they went to great lengths to secure them. And I think about that all the time when I'm driving 45 minutes to the farm that I get my food at because I want it to be a specific way. And it's not easy. It's definitely not as easy as going to the King Supers down the street and just getting whatever they have. It's also way more expensive, but it's so worth it. These cultures were like spending half a day collecting seafood in the ocean to get these special foods. So I really think that it massively impacted how positive my experience was postpartum.
And are there a handful of foods that you would suggest for new mamas specifically?
Yes. The first one is meat stock. Lots and lots of meat stock. And meat stock is different than bone broth. We conflate the two a lot of times, but meat stock is not going to be easily bought at the grocery store. It should congeal when it's in the fridge. It should be like Jell-O in the fridge. And what you do is super easy. You can take a whole chicken, or I like using oxtail or neck bones or whatever you have that's like a connective tissue piece. You chicken backs, chicken feet, all that's great. And you do 4 cups of water filtered to 1 cup of meat with bones. And that'll give you that good ratio to get that nice gel. You can add in other veggies and seasonings if you want. And that is so nourishing from a collagen perspective. And if you think about birth, there's so much stretching. Again, no matter how you give birth, there's still so much stretching in the body, and we need to bring that back. If you also think about the fact that you have a wound on the inside of your womb that is the size of a dinner plate, imagine that was on the outside of your body. I think about that when people are walking around a week postpartum. I'm like, if you had a wound that was the size of your placenta on the outside of your body, you would not be walking around right now. So we really want to encourage healing, and all of that gelatin and that collagen supports that. So meat stock, you can drink it as a cup, like a cup of coffee with ginger or whatever in it, lemon juice, or you can use it to make soups and stews. All of that is really nourishing. And then blood building foods. So red meat, iron, beets, other red foods in Chinese medicine are considered blood building as well. And making sure that it's easy to digest. Like salad, not a postpartum mom's friend. You want those slow cooked, melt in your mouth meats and starchy veggies to support your body getting enough calories and energy for breastfeeding, but also your digestive system. Again, think about all of the space that baby was taking up, and then it just all goes away and everything is reshifting. Your energy needs are big. It's really helpful to take some of that stress of digestion off of your body by utilizing well-cooked foods. So I love slow-cooked carnitas and briskets and things like that. And if anyone wants to send me a message and ask for it, I made a postpartum packet for myself that included everything of like, this is what I want my husband to do the first several days. This is how people communicate with him. Here's a letter to guests. But then it also had a shopping list that anyone could take, any visitor, any friend, et cetera, could take and go do some shopping for us. And then also a list of recipes. So if people were like, oh, I want to cook you something, or oh, I want to help you guys, it was really easy for me to be like, great, can you please pick something off of this list? So that I knew I was getting the foods that were really good for me. And so I have that. If anyone wants to send me a message, I usually give it to clients, but I'd be happy to share that. Mm-hmm. So cooked meat stock, the blood building foods like red meat, liver, things like that. Seafood is also great because it has all those trace minerals, which again, we have that massive mineral dump. So eating shrimp, cod, oysters, clams, mussels, whatever, a couple times a week. Yeah, those are my best ones. It's interesting. The one thing I'll say is I feel like a lot of people are in the oats and lactation cookie on these breastfeeding groups I'm in, and people are like eating Oreos to like get enough calories. It's a really interesting world in that sense. And it's not that I'm anti-oats. I think grains, when properly prepared, can be a fine food. But I think people are missing the point. If you are hungry when you're breastfeeding, the idea isn't to have shelf-stable packaged snacks next to your bed. That's not going to serve you that much. When I was pregnant and I would wake up in the middle of the night and need a snack, I would just keep a few meatballs by my bed. It's weird, but who cares? And they're totally fine at room temperature for a few hours. Really try and break out of the mold of convenience packaged foods because it's really not going to serve you in the long run with your breastfeeding journey and or just postpartum journey.
So helpful. Thank you so much. We've been speaking today with Stefanie Adler, a certified nutrition consultant, functional diagnostic nutritionist, women's hormone and fertility expert, and birth doula. Thank you so much for being here today, Stefanie. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the Prepared for Parenthood podcast today. I hope you found this episode educational, informational, and conversational, and that you'll join me again for another episode soon. If you enjoyed listening to today's podcast, I'd very much appreciate if you would rate, review, and subscribe. If you're interested in more information related to today's podcast, or are looking for parent coaching or courses, you can find my information in the show notes or online at preparedforparenthood.com.